move up online?
I didn't see it when I left.
You made it on auto because I'm not used to laying. You said you don't use from.
Yeah, that's cool.
Laying it right.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah.
But this one I just didn't see online.
Did
Thank
you email it to them? Or?
Huh?
Did you email it to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Daryl, did you get it, Daryl? Via email?
I did not. I did not get it.
Send it to all three of them.
Mayor?
Can you send it to me? Maybe I'll try to forward it.
No.
Yeah.
Let me do that.
Thanks.
Just getting her attention.
Right now? Okay. Sorry about that.
Murphy's Law.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the work session of the Manassas Park governing body for May 11th, 2021. Per the General Assembly's approval of the governor's amendments to the biennial budget, the governing body may now meet electronically without a quorum actually assembled in a single location and without the in-person governing body members voting on the participation of those who are remoting in. The following benchmarks for the meeting this evening have been met. First, the governor has declared a state of emergency for the current COVID-19 pandemic in accordance with Code of Virginia. Second, the declared emergency makes it impractical or potentially unsafe for the governing body to assemble in a single location, and guidance from state and federal governments support this determination. Therefore, the governing body will be meeting with various members participating electronically through GoToMeeting. Third, the meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the governing body. Fourth, the governing body will make available a recording or transcript of the meeting on its website in accordance with Code of Virginia. Fifth, notice has been and will continue to be provided to the public using available methods. Lastly, we have made and will continue to make arrangements for public access through electronic means, including the ability to comment. Those participating electronically are Councilmember Darrell Moore, Councilmember Hasib Javed, and Vice Mayor Banks. Those participating in person are Councilmember Yessi Amaya, Councilmember Alana Mensing, Councilmember Laura Hampton, and Mayor Jeanette Rischel. Next, we have approval of the agenda. If everyone is in agreement, I would like to add an item after the budget work session and immediately prior to number 5. This item would address the possibility of adding to the flags that the city display on poles up and down Manassas Drive. Are there any objections to that? Okay, hearing no objections, do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we have no unfinished business, but I would like to read an email that arrived into the public record. This is from Mr. Joe Delansky. To whom it may concern, I want to thank the City of Manassas Park on continuing to focus on the enforcement of decals and parking. The buzz is evident all over social media, and it is noticeable in the city as changes are occurring. We are all seeing less outdated city decals on cars in the city. Now the need is focusing on cars without any city decals and with out-of-state tags. I applaud the police department for continuing the ticketing process. As you can see, change is slowly taking place. The corrective process will take time and cannot happen overnight. The steep fines are also what leverages this process and pushes the citizens to follow city codes and make changes. I feel that many years have passed and the city's decline has come to the forefront. Therefore, the steep fines need to continue for the same length of time. The high fines show the citizens the importance of protecting our city. This is, in turn, will provide revenue for the city to continue to thrive. Citizens are thankful for the focus on protecting the value of their homes in the city. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Mr. Delansky. Okay, next is item 3A. The governing body will This is 3A is urban entitlement designation for federal housing and community development allocations. The governing body will receive a briefing from Prince William County, and that's scheduled for June 15th. Unfortunately, we may not have answers to our in-depth questions this evening. I will say from the emails, from the attachments that were on the email that we received, to my knowledge, this is the most information that the city has received so far about this partnership. City Manager, do you have any comments before we go into governing body comments?
I don't know.
Okay. So let's start with our folks at home. Comments about the item 3A. Councilmember Javed.
I have no questions.
No questions? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Moore.
I have no questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor Banks?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Hampton?
So I just wanted a clarification that we have to pass this to get funding for housing, correct? Because we don't have a standalone resource
Exactly.
in the city.
Yeah, there are items here that we would not be eligible for that could be very important to members of the community. For example, the neighborhood housing rehab program, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that I had that correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, correct. Councilmember Mensing?
No questions.
Councilmember Amaya? Okay. I have a couple in-depth questions, but I'll just wait until June 15th, and because this needs to be signed promptly. So the staff recommendation is for the governing body to approve as presented. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next is resolution for the approval of FY22 school budget.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. I'll take this off. I'm actually going to bring up the resolution in case there's any edits you may want to make. So let me get that open here. Please let me know if you can see that at home.
I can see it. Yeah, I can see it as well.
Great, thank you. So this was done in collaboration with the school superintendent and myself. They provided some input, including the updated numbers, and they did clarify that they did adjust their request to $12.7 million flat as well. So there's kind of an agreement now between both bodies. So other than that, there's really nothing more to add, except I did separate out just to kind of, for historical record, that extra $1.2 million for the high school roof. So just as a reminder, you're approving a resolution tonight just to say that we've adopted a budget, but again, the official budget will be adopted via ordinance in June timeframe.
So this is a legal requirement that we do this by a certain
we have to
date.
pass a budget for the schools by May 15th. So this is technically passing a budget. But again, just like we can do budget amendments, right? So we'll be holding a public hearing on June 8th for the whole budget, city, schools, everything else, which again allows us to make any further adjustments to the school's budget as well down the road, just like the city's budget, not to exceed. So tonight you'll see the next agenda item shows all the caps on spending. So we won't be able to spend more above those without doing a subsequent public hearing. And we can spend less if we'd like to.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify for the folks at home. Thank you. Okay, let's see if there's any questions. Councilmember Hampton.
No, actually don't have any questions.
Okay. Councilmember Mensing.
No questions.
Councilmember Amaya.
No questions.
Okay. Councilmember Moore.
We may have lost it. Give me 1 second.
Councilmember Moore.
Did you, yeah, no question.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Councilmember Javed.
Yeah, it is, when Laszlo said that 12.7 was upon their request?
Yeah, so you all reached consensus, or everybody reached consensus last time to show $12.7 million in city transfer. But at their meeting, they did the same thing. They decided to adjust their request for at least the guy to return that document that I got from the school superintendent. This clause here, let's see, where was it? Yeah, right here. This was added by the school superintendent, so the school board has revised the school's fiscal year 22 budget to include requested city transfer for support of education of $12.7 million. It didn't have that $92,000 within it.
Okay. Yeah. So what you're showing on the screen is what you were referring to, or is it a different document?
This is the resolution. So what I did is I sent last year's resolution to Dr. McDade, and then he came back and made edits, updated the table with the updated FY22 numbers, these two bullets down here, then some of the whereas I added some whereas I updated the title, made some minor changes, but this clarification was added by the superintendent directly about the 12.7.
Okay. Did they give a reason of why the 92,000 was not added, or just curious?
No. I was rushing to kind of get this done, so I was just looking for feedback on what numbers to place, but I didn't ask why the change.
That's all for me, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Banks?
Yeah, I just wanted to identify it and that the capital transfer for the high school roof project is that number, that 1.2 million.
That's what they're requesting.
Yep. All right. Just identifying that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, staff recommendation is that the governing body approve the resolution as presented. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Do we have a second? Or was
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, time for DSS briefing. Thank you.
Okay. Can you all see those lines? Okay, perfect. So Randy, just tell me when you'd like for me to click next.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. Thank you for allowing me to present the department's information this evening. Thank you, Laszlo, for updating the date on the slide too. That's great. Thank you. Next slide, please. I always like to start out just as a reminder, refresher of what our department looks like. We have 3 units, the Family Services Unit, the Benefits Program Unit, and then what we call our Administrative Unit. Next slide, please. And then, of course, you all don't have the pleasure of seeing these wonderful faces on a regular basis, so I like to include a slide that allows you to be able to connect with the department a little bit. I am happy to report that since putting together this org chart, we've hired 2 additional staff. So we have Erica Lorano, who has joined us as the part-time benefits HSA, and Alejandra Tomunovic has joined us for the vacant services HSA part-time position. And then George Mason has wrapped up, and Jessica has gone on and graduated with her bachelor's in social work, but she was a great addition this year to our agency. Next slide, please. I wanted to start out by just highlighting some areas of our department. It's been a real difficult year with COVID, like most departments and most families and individuals in the world. But we've managed to do a really good job at continuing to meet our state benchmarks. We are still providing fantastic customer service. And this is despite seeing a large increase in our CPS caseload as well as our foster care caseload. We are in need of a full-time family services specialist and a part-time family services specialist to help assist coordinate our CSA program, which is one of the largest program areas within our department. It's very complex, very time-consuming, and very important for our at-risk youth in the community. And, we're hoping that we've seen the progression of the downtown, which has staff excited and motivated to hopefully, have that new situation close the gap of the pay gap that our other jurisdictions have. And another highlight that I wanted to point out is that we've had low turnover. And what turnover we have had has been a result of a promotion. So we've been able to, fill vacancies with staff that were at a lower level vacancy, which is really great. We have staff now that started our agency at part-time HSA, and now they're level 3 workers. So it's really great to see that happening within our department. And we were also able to establish a local foster child donation line this last year. With bringing additional kids into care, it came holiday season and we realized, wow, the state does not really allow for holiday purchase gifts to be reimbursed. And we've got a large number of foster children that are not with their forever home right now. They might have been in a residential facility or a temporary placement. And last minute, I put an email out citywide, and it was so great to see our city staff even struggling, with our own personal pandemic issues and the outpouring of donations for these kids. So we went ahead and established this local foster care donation line now. So hopefully we can continue to collect funds and present gifts to our kids, not just at Christmas time, but if they make a good grade, if they graduate, if they have a birthday. So I'm really excited that we were able to put that in place. Next slide, please. As I briefly mentioned, with 3 units, admin unit is the vital link, I always say, for our entire department. They assist every single person within the department, and they're also the face of the department with reaching out to customers. And I mentioned this already too, but despite the pandemic and the switch from not necessarily having individuals come into our lobby, the staff have still done a great job at providing customer service, and I think that's really important to point out because we're now doing that in a virtual world, and it's been great to see that we've been able to make the transition to still provide that great level of customer service. Our agency has continued to see an increase in applications, and our admin unit is the frontline staff that receives those applications. So to be able to stay on top of that has been really great. They've actually been short-staffed most of the last year and a half. Both of the admin women have welcomed babies into their families. We call them our DSS babies. So there's been a lot of time where we've actually had just Kofi, our admin manager, and just one admin staff member juggling all the applications coming in and, responding to inquiries. So really proud of what the admin unit is able to do. Next slide, please. And this just shows you the data compared from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20 of how busy our front admin staff really are. It's interesting where you can see that obviously we had a period of time where there were no lobby visits, although the interaction, maintained at a high level, if not higher level, but we did that remotely. And I just lost my train of thought with that one. I was going to mention the pre-pandemic tools that we already had in place. The admin had already been proactive with trying to get our agency paperless. It just makes it a lot easier when we're not fumbling through hard copies of papers and possibly misplacing documents. So we had established inquiry generic emails that go directly to the admin unit, and that really allowed us to already have our system in place of getting back to clients quickly and making sure that all 4 of us in the admin unit knew what was going on. It wasn't like, well, who responded to this customer? Did you or did you? We were just replying to that generic email and, capturing the resolution with just one reply. So that was really great. But yeah, the admin's been doing a great job. Next slide. And moving on to our benefits unit, these are the staff members that are responsible for SNAP, Medicaid, TANF, emergency assistance programs such as UL, cooling, and crisis. Same thing, pre-pandemic, we had created an inquiry email, and this really allowed the transition to work where we were able to accept documents through the email address. It really cut down the back and forth between customers when that inquiry would come in to the DSS docs. In the back door, we were already pushing that to the workers, so everybody was on the same line of communication. It worked out really great. And pre-pandemic, we had already moved most of our benefit system paperless anyways, with applying online through the Common Health website, as well as allowing citizens to call into the help numbers, which was great because there was a lot of times during the pandemic that the internet was being overwhelmed. And when an individual wasn't able to use the internet to apply, they had that backup to be able to call and talk entry that number or that data into the system. And on the flip side, what's great about that is it allows the application to already be quote unquote dumped into our VA CMS processing system. So it's really a win-win situation. It's very easy for the customer to apply, and then most of the basic data entry is already done for the worker, so they can more efficiently and effectively begin processing the eligibility of that application. Next slide, please. Here also, I'm just showing you our data in our benefits unit from our primary program areas of SNAP and Medicaid. As you can see, the pandemic did not slow us down one single bit. If anything, we actually received more applications. I think that this is just a good example of how our community is growing in size. The fact that there were still that many citizens that needed services during the pandemic and were able to apply just shows how we're growing. And again, really proud of the staff to be able to keep up with the processing and just handle jumping into the remote work so quickly and so efficiently, so we didn't have to have benefits interrupted for our community. Next slide, please. This is the last unit or services unit. You may know them primarily for CPS, foster care, and adoption, but as you can see here, they're responsible for quite a bit. UAIs, I mentioned earlier, our CSA at-risk population. In our agency, they also handle child care cases, guardianship cases, which is where the court requires DSS involvement for an individual that might need special protection. The UAIs are done in conjunction with our health department, where an actual nurse and a DSS worker right now will virtually visit the individual and assess them to determine whether or not they're eligible for home-based services. That could be Meals on Wheels. It could be having a paid caregiver come into the home 3 times a week to help with cleaning and bathing, things like that. And resource families, which is so important right now to make sure that we are finding the time to train our own community members to become Manassas Park resource families. It's great when we're able to place a Manassas Park youth with a Manassas Park family. And it's also more cost effective than having to use what we call a child placing agency. Next slide, please. So I have quite a bit of data here on the next few slides that are going to give you a different perspective. I did the comparative, but I've also broken it down by months. It's really important, I feel, for you guys to get a feel for the number of intakes and actual CPS cases that are coming in right now. You can see, obviously, that the number did increase between fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. But what's interesting when I show you the next few slides, next slide, please, is that you're going to see periods here of when we were on lockdown, I guess, if you want to say, during the pandemic, when things were starting. And I think I had these actually a little bit backwards. I'm showing you here the tail end first. But there were clearly a period of months where it was very alarming that the number of intakes and CPS referrals were drastically down. So the fact that our overall yearly numbers are still so high, knowing that some of these individual months were so low as a result of the pandemic, is alarming to me. Again, just like our benefits programs are seeing an increase, so are our services programs. Next slide, please. So again, here you can further see that we're coming out of the pandemic where more kids are going back into school. Doctors' offices are no longer doing virtual visits. And that's when we start to see the numbers of our CPS-related cases surge. Next slide, please. Again, you can just see probably the biggest month in the jump here of just the last couple of months, where I feel like our world is getting a little bit back to normal. And you can see that, not only did February jump, but look at the number of calls that came in just between February and March. It's very alarming. And I do expect that our numbers are going to stay closer to that 37 as opposed to that 17. Next slide, please. It's right here. Oh, let me jump ahead. Okay. So with that being said, I did want to bring to your attention that there are guidelines that should be adhered to ensure that we are keeping our community safe, keeping my staff safe. This is really hard work. Unfortunately, the state DSS does not set state guidelines, so this information was pulled from the National Social Workers Alliance. And you can see that they really say that a caseload should be no more than 12 and 15 children per worker, and that, it should not exceed 18. That's where we can really get into trouble with safety risks. And they also point out that these counts are program specific. our service staff are considered generic, not specific. So this recommendation is that one foster care worker could have 12 to 15 foster children. One child care worker could have 12 to 15, and so on. What we do is we cross-train so that all of our staff have the skills, so when we're short-staffed, we're able to jump in. That requires staff to know all program areas, all policies, and all procedures, and it is very demanding and can be very overwhelming. Next slide, please. So what I did here is I took the data from the March slide previously shown and gave you a current count of what cases we actively had for the month of March 2021. We had 37 referrals, 2 adoptions, 2 UAIs, 4 child care cases, and that does not include applications on our waiting list. Those are just 4 new active cases. We have 20 CSA caseloads, 11 foster children, 2 adult services, 2 APS, 16 guardianships, and we're working with 5 resource families right now. So if we add all that up for March, we're looking at about 101 cases. And if you break that down into my staff, and keep in mind that HSAs are not social workers, they're not family service workers, they're not allowed to carry a caseload. They are there to assist the workers. That breaks down that for the month of March, 20 cases per my worker when I include a supervisor. And a supervisor in a larger agency does not carry a caseload. Supervisor's responsibility is to supervise their staff to make sure everybody's dotting their I's and crossing their T's. So if we were acting as other localities do, that means that my workers would average in the month of March about 25 cases each right now with the various program areas that we're working. And these are not duplicated. This was all of March. Next slide, please. So that brings me to my initial slide where I stated that we drastically need services staff. You know, the data that I've provided, I think, outlines and justifies the need for one additional family services specialist, as well as a part-time a part-time CSA coordinator. You know, I think that it would drastically reduce safety risk, not only to the staff, but to the community. And really, I want to prevent staff burnout. Social work is hard, just like fire, just like police. We see a lot of things that, you know, are difficult to see. And I'm big on mental health. I'm big on making sure that my staff have their needs met. And right now, we really need additional services staff. Next slide, please. So this is what our new org chart would look like if we're able to add additional staff. I kind of have the CSA part-time FSS floating under admin. A lot of CSA related duties right now are conducted by the admin staff. So I could see that position is assisting both units to make sure that CSA is running appropriately. It would bring us up to 17 full-time employees, 3 part-time, bringing us to a total of 20 staff. And in doing that, we would drastically see the example of the March data drop. It would be about 1 worker to 13 to 15 cases. Next slide, please. And great news, I know Laszlo had brought this up in a previous meeting. We have now received our final budget allocations, and I'm so happy to report that we did receive $58,788 with no local match fiscal year 22 to hire additional family services staff. So we're very excited about that. And I also wanted to point out that those of you that were with us when we had the Medicaid expansion, the city was provided $92,755. When we received that back in fiscal year 20, that allowed us to hire one additional benefits staff member as well as acquire the new space. We were told that eventually that would be placed in our base budget, which would require a 15.5% local match. And I'm also happy to report that that funding was given to our locality again with no local match. And I also believe that the 5% state-supported salary increase was discussed in my absence. And we're very excited about that. And they also provided that 5% funding in with that Medicaid expansion. So that was great. We got a few more $1,000 in the expansion line with no local match too. So these are all really great things. I think that, the pandemic really highlighted to the state what localities are going through. And I'm really happy to see that they're increasing budgets and giving the locals what we need to continue to be successful and keep people safe. Next slide, please. I just wanted to touch base on some of our accomplishments that we've had over this year. We were able to assist with the senior food hotline during the COVID pandemic. It was really great to work alongside Parks and Rec and be able to provide that service to the community. It allowed benefit staff to continue to process SNAP applications and Medicaid applications, with Public Works helping to disperse that food. We also were able to coordinate and implement the rent and utility program with COVID funds. That was a big accomplishment to take on, underutilized, but really great to see that we had the ability to take on that along with everything else and provide that service to the community that needed it. And we've also continued to participate in a variety of city and Greater Prince William-wide initiatives despite the pandemic. A lot has been moved to a virtual platform. For example, our benefits supervisor was actually invited to a Northern Region roundtable to provide insight on how we were maintaining our SNAP numbers through the pandemic. And that was really awesome to have us highlighted like that on a national, not a national, but a Northern Region call. So it's great always to hear that the staff are doing a fantastic job and to have that done with our social work peers, our DSS peers, it makes it even better. We've done a great job again with monitoring our CSA savings and being as efficient as possible with that funding. I believe that we are on target again to be underspent for that funding. Staff always do a really great job at exploring all funding avenues to see, what we can finagle and charge where that's allowable to be able to save funding in the CSA line, as there is a large local match associated with that line item. And just having dedicated and trustworthy staff, we are piloting, I'll call it, a telework staff member right now. We had one of our benefits staff that was going to move to Pennsylvania. Her husband had taken a new job, and she reached out to me and Ms. Simmons, her supervisor, and just said, you know, I really enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy my team, but I have to move. And we went ahead and drafted up, along with help of local HR, and put a telework policy in place. And it's working out fantastic. She's doing a fantastic job, and I'm hoping that, you know, this might lead to other opportunities for our department. You know, who knows? You know, having someone from Southern Virginia process our SNAP Medicaid applications could be in the near future. So we'll see. And lastly, I wanted to touch base on our quarterly local agency dashboard reports. These are fairly new. I think they've been coming out now for a full year. They are sent to Laszlo as well as myself and our advisory board. It showcases department-wide, and it compares us to other local agencies at the same level 1, as well as the northern region and statewide. And I'll be incorporating some of that dashboard data into our monthly presentations to you, so you can see overall. I know you can hear me talking about what a great job they're doing, but I'll actually be able to show you some data and some dashboards that literally are comparing us to other agencies our size and agencies that are much larger than us, and we're still holding down the fort and getting the job done. So very happy for the staff.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that point and thank Randy and her staff, because when I saw, not this last report, but the previous report, we went in depth early with Randy and her team. Again, that we were just recognized for being able to process applications and everything in kind of a very quick timeline compared to kind of other jurisdictions, despite, again, kind of the large workload specialization as well. So I just want to say kudos to Randy and her team for being able to deliver good results.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think that's it. We just have, I mentioned some of the community partnerships, so you can see here that despite COVID, we still participated in Trunk or Treat. And I'm not sure if you can see Catherine's costume there, though, but she's got the baby skeleton there in her stomach for her. That's how she announced to my staff that she was expecting, because, you know, we were remote, so everybody was only seeing her from head up. So as her belly started to grow, not very many people were seeing her, so she put that costume on and announced to everybody that she was expecting. And then the other two photos are our intern Jessica. She helped out a lot with a lot of the outreach that was being done at City Hall to provide tickets and collect that information. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Randy. That was an excellent presentation, and we really appreciate the photographs. That helps us out a great deal. So let's start with questions. Councilmember Amaya, any questions?
No questions. Just thank you for the hard work that you guys do. It's awesome. Thank you.
Councilmember Mensing?
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Hampton?
Hello, Randy. I was wondering what trends we'll be facing Department of Social Services in the coming months.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that. I heard you say facing social services in the upcoming months, but I missed the first part.
Trends, sorry about that. My voice kind of goes in and out these days. Trends or issues that are facing social services in the coming months.
I would say that the increase in our CPS intakes and referrals is a huge trend right now. You know, we're definitely trying to figure out which staff are best equipped to handle that increase. It takes the right kind of individual to be able to sit down with a child who just experienced trauma. It's hard for the victim, and it's hard on the staff members. So my trend is trying to, get staff acclimated emotionally to be able to handle this increase, and hopefully get them the additional staff to alleviate the stress of trying to keep our numbers where they are, keep individuals safe. So that's on the services side. On the benefits side, in July, Medicaid has expanded dental benefits. Typically, dental benefits were only for those individuals under the age of 19. And then for pregnant moms, they were offered a cleaning. So now that expanded group of 19 all the way up, and not just to 64, will now be eligible for dental benefits. So kind of curious to see if that's going to make our numbers pop. Dental insurance is very expensive. And very needed. Dental health can lead to a lot of other health issues. So I'm interested to see once that starts to get piloted, if we'll see an increase in our Medicaid applications. The other thing that the benefits unit is bracing for is the lifting of the sanctions. So right now we are unable to close Medicaid cases unless an individual requests it in writing, moves out of the state, or is deceased. And what's happening is all of the Medicaid renewals that are coming due during the pandemic are frozen. Now, we're a small locality, and I'm hyperventilating over that along with my staff. I can't even imagine a Fairfax County or a place like that has thousands upon thousands of Medicaid renewals that are overdue, that you're not allowed to process, and when the sanctions lift, will all be due at one time. And right now, the state has not provided concrete guidance on how that's going to look. Are they going to pick up the same year cycle so it's kind of balanced out per month, or are we just going to be bombarded with those renewals all at once?
Thank you.
That's interesting. Councilmember Javed, comments or questions?
Hey, good evening, Randy.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just commenting about the caseload. That is alarming, the increasing caseloads for each individual social worker. Because, the more caseload they receive is less service they can provide. The relationship they build with the families is not there. You want that one-on-one, that relationship. It's stuff like this, it's going to be hard to adjust. So I know we're asking for more additional staff, but what would what would your number be for caseload per person, ideally?
I'm not sure I would necessarily comment right at this moment on an actual number. When I first started with the agency nearly 15 years ago, we had enough staff that we were able to have specific staff per program. So we did have an APS worker. We did have an AS worker. We did have 2 designated CPS workers that tag teamed everything. And it has been a very long time, probably since the rifts that we had back in 2008 when we had to let 2.5 staff members go, and we had to transition the agency, to still meet the needs of the community. and work with what we had at the time. So for me, my goal would be able to get back to that. If that meant that, you know, it was 5 cases for a worker because it was more program centered, that really is the root of the evil, is having to know so many different program areas and time frames. And that's where having a supervisor who has to carry a caseload leaves me unsettled as well, because her job should be reviewing case files, you know, making sure that our mandates are being met, that if a worker is overwhelmed, she's able to pick up on that because she's regularly meeting and observing, not, you know, disheveled and carrying her own caseload. So if I had to put a number on it, you know, I could, but for me, I look at it from being able to have program-specific workers again.
And to make matters worse, so not only was Randy's team reduced and the organization changed to kind of being generalists, but the city population grew by almost a third since that time of the reduction in staff, without the downtown anything being, you know, approved. It's just from existing organic growth and all previous developments that occurred before that time. We already grew as a city by a third without the staff levels keeping up pace. So now it's almost impossible to go back to that model unless, you know, we were able to build up a much larger team comparable in ratio to what we had back in that time.
Do you have a follow-up question, Councilmember Javed?
My other question was in regards to the foster children. Where the ones that don't have a sponsor, where are the kids? I guess where do they sleep at night, basically?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. So you know, we do all that we possibly can to not have to remove a child from their home. But unfortunately, sometimes it has to be done in order to keep that child safe. And that sometimes can result in removing an older youth who it can be very challenging to find foster families that, you know, I don't want to say want to, but are capable of caring for an older child. And when that happens, or the reason for removal could put someone at harm from them being in a home placement, then they're placed in a residential facility. And a residential facility is where a youth would live 24/7. So they have a room, that's where they go to school, that's where they live. And, you know, hopefully they're able to get the resources that they need at that facility to either transition, you know, to a home-based center, or eventually age out, or age into a, I'm drawing a blank right now. We were just talking about the program. I'm going to call it Chafee, but that's not it. It's like an independent living program where the state provides dollars to assist with the youth finding their own apartment and things like that. So, yeah, residential facility or in a home with a foster family.
That's all I had for you, Randy. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Randy, for the presentation. I just wanted to follow up on Councilmember Javed's question. My question is, how many staff would it take to get to the program-specific level that we had back before the rift in 2008?
I believe we had 23 staff member at that time, and I may be missing a couple. Back then we had some part-time staff that would shuffle in between Prince William County, Manassas City, and Manassas Park. They were called floaters. and they would strictly assist with renewals. So I want to say about 23 staff.
You currently have 20 or 19, I believe.
We have 18.
18, thank you.
And we'll have 20 hopefully after the full-time and the part-time addition.
Part-time position.
Yeah, yep.
Appreciate that. My next question, I guess, is more towards the city manager. The 5% that was given to DSS from the state for salary increases, is that added on to the 3% that we're giving all our employees for salary increases? If so, where is the gap for DSS workers? Is it a lot better than what other positions?
Yeah, so that's complex question. The 5% was a standalone, so we didn't do the additional 3%. We put the difference into reserves. We can evaluate providing an additional 3%. That does alter, right? So I have to look at what the cost would be for 22, but then also the long-term tenure model of doing so. But your gap question is the key one, because it's going to depend on which jurisdictions accept it and which ones don't accept the 5%. And that's something we're still waiting to see. If the other jurisdictions that we're competing with don't accept the 5%, then our gap has closed. If they do accept it, then we haven't really closed the gap, we just kept up. And then so the next few years when we start our gap reduction strategy in FY23 through FY26, we'd have to then adjust the numbers accordingly to make sure that we're still keeping up pace. But we do have the opportunity, if that's an interest, to shift from reserves to additional pay raises. It's something I could go back and crunch the numbers and see what we could do with that.
So when you initially made the proposal for the 3%, that's before we knew that the state was going to give us 5% to DSS workers.
That's correct.
So it's never intended. I'm sorry?
I said we thought that some a pay raise was coming and that potentially was going to be there, but we weren't certain. So we assumed no money coming from the state. We just didn't know what was happening with COVID and everything else. So we went ahead and budgeted that 3%. That's why, remember, it was actually cheaper for us to accept the 5% state-funded increase that had a 15% city match versus doing a go it alone 3% pay raise. But you're absolutely right. There's nothing precluding us from not adding additional percentage increases to that.
Yeah, particularly, I can't imagine any jurisdiction not accepting the 5% pay increase for their employees. And so that's just going to make our gap just as wide if everybody's accepting the 5%. So I would think we want to give the additional 3% to the DSS workers. Just a thought.
Yeah, it's certainly something if that's something the governing body would like to do, I can then crunch the numbers and see what the impact would be. But again, it's going to have kind of those longer term ramifications. But to your point, so if right now, let's say prior to 5%, the other jurisdictions were to give what I've heard most across the board, 2.5%, 3% raises across the board, but they instead accept the 5%, then we're still, keeping up with the other jurisdictions. If they're doing what you said, right, where they were going to continue with the 2.5% that they had planned previous to getting the 5% plus the 5%, then you're absolutely right, then the gap is going to start widening. So it really depends on what the other jurisdictions are doing. We can run the numbers now, or we can wait and see what everyone else is doing and then adjust afterwards. Just make sure that we are at least keeping up, because that was my strategy this year across the board, was just to make sure that the city keeps up with the increases across our competitors, not necessarily closing the gap. The closing gap strategy starts in FY23 as the debt position starts to drop, and when we have more confidence in a more flexible financial position to start taking that on, because it's a pretty sizable annual investment to kind of close that gap.
Well, I think it's probably wise for us to wait and see what other jurisdictions are doing. But I also think, City Manager, that it was very prudent that you put those monies in reserve so that we could do the analysis after the fact, and the monies will be there.
I believe that was your resolve recommendation, so that was you all being prudent.
I'm
Very
sorry,
good.
what did you say?
That's all my questions. Thank you.
They shouldn't put it in reserves.
Yeah, yeah, it was. Okay. Do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Moore?
I guess my only follow-up, Randy, it seems like there's a correlation between what Chief Luga spoke to us about the increase in sexual crimes in our city and the increase in CPS cases. Is there a correlation?
Yes, unfortunately, the majority of our CPS cases are sexual in nature, yes. That's a tough one when I'm asked why I think that is. I always try to put a positive spin on it, whereas, there's more outreach, more education. I like to believe that people are more aware of what's going on and what sexual abuse is, and they report on it, as opposed to maybe years ago when the education was not there, or individuals that were being abused didn't feel as supported to speak up. But yes, there is a correlation, and we are seeing an increase. Absolutely.
Thank you, Randy. Excellent presentation. No more questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Banks?
Thank you, Randy, for the presentation. Councilmember Gervais, I think you asked a really good question about what happens to the foster youth when they don't have a home. I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, but isn't the stat like 80% of foster youth suffer from mental health problems because of neglect associated with experience?
I don't know the exact percentage. I wouldn't feel comfortable commenting on that, but I can definitely do the research to get the numbers. Unfortunately, a lot of youth nowadays do have issues. Mental health is huge right now, awareness, and it can be very traumatic for an individual to be removed from their family, and that can often, result in mental health issues. But I can definitely pull some data for you if you're interested in that.
I used to volunteer for helping adopted kids. So my question is about, on one of your earlier slides, you showed an increase of calls for 2020 versus 2019, and it was 2,394. Oh, there it is. Right there. Yeah. What's the majority of those phone calls?
It can be from the schools. It could be from a concerned community member, a doctor, any health representative, a counselor, doctors, nurses. But it's pretty much all aspects of individuals wanting to report. So of those calls, the next column, well, actually, I think this is actually the data for SNAP. This isn't the correct slide, but
I think this is overall calls, Randy, that your administrative team takes in, which would include benefits and services.
Preston was talking about the number of services calls, like the CPS intakes that we get.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah. So when you look at this, of the 254 calls, even though they could be walk-ins or online entries, 154 of them had to be acted upon. So that means there was some type of next step process. I think that's what's really important to stress is one phone call into the agency is like an octopus, a spider, however you want to analyze that or give an example. But it's then a follow-up, it's how many days, does it become an investigation or an assessment? Is it just putting together a safety plan? Or, are we now going to have a family partnership meeting where we bring every single person involved in that youth life together and put a plan in place? So every single one of those 254 calls have to be acted upon. And then of those calls, the yellow column there is how many become something, let's say. In a new case, you have to have a 5-day gap. So if I were to make a call today, we could not consider that a new call unless there were 5 days in between. That kind of gives you an idea of, you know, how many different scenarios are coming into the agency.
And then Randy, can you comment on this, the calls coming into your administrative section? Are the majority of those benefits related, services, a mix?
Yeah, they're mostly benefits related. We have a system in place where we have an intake worker, and during the pandemic, a lot of the neighboring partners that we have, police, schools, have direct access to the workers. So these are primarily inquiries, you know, SNAP, Medicaid, help with rent or utilities. You know, I didn't get my benefits this month, all those calls, but they're primarily benefits driven.
And also, I saw on one of your slides, you have a few families that are pursuing adoption in our city.
Yeah, so we actually have 2 children right now that were adopted by Manassas Park residents. They have since moved to Georgia, and the children went along with them. We are required to still check on them. We have a sibling unit of 3. It's called TPR, Termination of Parental Rights. It's been about 1.5 years now where we thought that the family that they've been placed with for like the last 3 years was going to be able to adopt them. But the judge is just having us do a few more X's and O's, or dotting our I's and our T's before that is finalized. And we have 2 other very young children that were placed as infants that I can definitely see eventually that happening as well. Manassas Park DSS for the longest time did not have our own foster families. When I was hired on as a director, that was one of the initiatives that I put forth. It's a huge cost savings to not have to utilize a child placing agency that can charge a locality lots of hidden fees to place a child with a trained family. We are just running through the seams, utilizing ours right now. This is the most foster children we've ever had. I know the slide says 11, but we just had to bring another one into care last week, I believe it was. The training is Pride module. It can be anywhere from 6 weeks to 12 weeks long, and it's really in-depth. It's really great training. It's definitely one of those trainings that I wish I would have had before I became a parent. And then what happens is home studies have to be conducted, background checks. So we might run a class that maybe has 10 participants and maybe only 1 or 2 of them may be eligible. They realize that, wow, you know, this is a lot harder than I thought, or perhaps we had to exclude them based on something that came out in the background. And that's all done by my staff as well. I have a handful of staff that are trained in the Pride module that literally conduct the training, train the parents. I have a great group of staff. I know I say it all the time, but I don't know how I've been so lucky. Yeah.
And my last comment is just a congratulations on your state awarded funding for the associated with the Medicaid expansion.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up, Preston?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Randy, that was a great presentation. Please express our appreciation to all of your staff. We know that DSS staff consistently performs beyond all expectations, and we sincerely appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to FY22 budget advertisement.
So before I get the resolution up there was still the outstanding item related to the fleet analysis that we had brought up. So I'm actually going to hand it off to Chris to go over that. And then I can give a quick update on ARPA funds, the American Relief Plan Act funds, on what I know now. It's still not complete, but at least what we know to this point. And we can go into the any other kind of budget Q&A you'd like to do, and then get the guidance, final guidance on what you'd like us to advertise. So Chris, I'm gonna make you the presenter here so you can bring up your spreadsheet there.
All right, well, that's passing over to me. Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. I'm here to kind of present the updated option as discussed during the last governing body session, where we had I believe it was the 23, and it was just brought to my attention momentarily, I think at the very beginning of the meeting, that there was a desire to look at the 19 vehicle count. And luckily, I had the saved formulas inside my sheet here, so I was able to provide an update to show the 19 numbers as well, so we can have a full discussion between all three options. But
Chris, would you be able, does Laszlo have that? Could it be printed out and given to us while you're speaking?
Yeah, I literally just finished, I think, the last number on here, so it's as fresh as it possibly can be, and I can send that over to Laszlo to print out
Chris,
when we're done talking.
Why don't you email that to me right now, and then
Okay.
and then I'll go ahead and print it out. And then also, if you could zoom in also on your spreadsheet whenever you start presenting, it's a little.
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Let me print that out.
Excuse me while I'm working through all my documents here. All right, Laszlo.
And that's if you can email it to us as well, or Chris, sorry.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and forward it.
For Laszlo, just to quickly forward it out.
Yep.
All right. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up mine. So do you want me to wait until everybody has something in front of them, or do you want me to just start talking and you can catch back up when you have a physical copy or a digital copy in hand?
If you could hang on just a sec till we get our copies, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll be standing by.
All right, so let me print this out. So Steve and Preston and Daryl, I just emailed it to you all.
Yep, got it.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you.
I will do my best to expand while still being able to kind of see everything on my laptop here. So, but hopefully, if everybody has a copy in front of them, the expanding on the TV won't be as necessary.
Not quite yet, almost.
Okay. So that's currently printing while that's printing out right now. Just to give you some updates on the ARPA money, the American Relief Plan Act So we were informed on Monday we received some Treasury guidance, vague, but I think our CFO was able to find additional documentation, so she's going through that for any additional guidance. We're going to receive two funds, essentially, a county portion and a city portion. We're going to be applying directly to the treasurer, the Federal Treasury Department for the county share, and that's something our CFO is looking into, the actual application process, which was made live Monday night. Our county share looks like it's about $3.4 million, but again, until we receive final confirmation from the treasurer when we submit the application, I would hate to even say that is the number that we're going to get from them, or even that they will give it to us directly, or if they're going to shift it over to the state. The portion that's called the non-entitlement, we're a non-entitlement city, which means we don't qualify for direct CDBG money. That's the city portion, because we're under 50,000 people. That's going to go to the state, and then the state then is going to provide it to the localities. We're supposed to get, the Treasury is going to provide guidance out to the states and jurisdictions about the amounts for the non-entitlement community sometime next week. But again, until the state receives it and the state notifies us of what we're getting and appropriates that to us, no guarantees. But so we don't know yet what the non-entitlement portion is, but we do know, or at least we've seen a list from the Treasury Department of what the county portion is that we're going to directly apply to the federal treasury, which is around $3.4 million. So that's all the update I have from the initial language that I wrote from kind of Treasury guidance. The funding, it seems like it's CARES Act again, but really they want to also emphasize support for families, right, who are struggling, housing support, and a lot of economic development. So business grants, helping industries that are struggling, right, from because of the pandemic, think movie theaters, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of good opportunities for us with this money whenever we get it, whenever we finally find out. But I just wanted to let you all know kind of the latest and greatest on that at least we received some indication from the Federal Treasury in terms of guidance and a dollar amount, at least for a portion of the money that we're going to get. So any questions on ARPA? I know I wish I had the whole answer, but I think we're just going to have to wait probably a couple months before the state lets us know what the non-entitlement process is going to be like from the state standpoint. But hopefully the county share that, since we're an independent city, hopefully that's a little bit quicker directly with the federal government. So when I find out more, I will let you all know.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, everyone should have a copy now.
Great. So at a high level, just before I start walking through where the key differences are with the different options here, just wanted to continue to make sure that when you look at this, think of it in terms of the 27 option, the 23 option, even the 19 option. Everything was run through the lens of optimizing the value of those plans over a course of 10 years, which is for enterprise and for the city, it is trying to build equity as quickly as possible into the program based off of replacing our aging vehicles while also minimizing fuel and maintenance costs to the maximum extent possible. And then balancing the kind of value add for number of vehicles versus impact on equity, fuel, and maintenance to come up with a correct vehicle replacement, while also looking at, if you look at our fleet inventory, it's not just the first year, looking at the out years into the future of replacing these vehicles in our fleet. Because, we look at 27, but our total white fleet that we're going to be in this program is about 76, 77. Actually, it's 76 now. So that's kind of the goal of the program is reducing costs as much as possible to replace as much as possible to build as much equity while minimizing fuel and maintenance. And so you'll see with individual options in year one, with any reduction in vehicle count, you're going to have a corresponding reduction in vehicle cost, but then there's going to be a corresponding increase in both increase in fuel costs, increase in maintenance, and a loss in equity. So the goal of the program in FY23 would be a right-sizing event. So you can see that the totals here are 33 vehicles total, 33 vehicles total, and 33 vehicles total in the first 2 years. the goal is always to build equity. So there's a right sizing event, meaning you're growing back into the program in order to get as much equity, in this case, which would be the 5-year replacement cycle of starting in FY27. So that's kind of the nature of why these numbers only really impact FY22 and 23, and then 27, 28. And then if you were to go on in the future, they'll impact FY32 and 33, and then so on and so forth into perpetuity. So as you can see, even if there is a slight savings when you think about cost, equity, fuel, and maintenance in year one, if you were to compare 27 vehicles versus 19, which is a total savings across all of it of $18,000 in FY23, because you're right sizing the fleet to get back into the program and grow equity and save on fuel and maintenance. The second year, the 19 model actually is $16,000 more expensive than the 27 model, because as you can see, you're growing back 14 vehicles versus 6 in year two. And this difference is about $2,000. Now that might seem like a kind of a margin, but when you roll that forward into 27 and 28, that difference becomes about $8,000. And then in 32 and 33, that difference grows even more, because the fundamental fact of the program is equity is maximizing its value today, and any time that you defer equity, you lose that value into perpetuity. So it's like a butterfly effect. It will always be worse as you're replacing those vehicles later. So overall, because the total right sizing event and the amount of cars, if you think about it in terms of total kind of differentiation between the models, you're really looking at some pretty thin margins, of which you have a near-term gain followed by a long-term loss. Also, the total cost between those two programs for both the 27 and the 23 and the 27 versus 19, they're actually across those 2 years, when you think about those replacement years, the 27 model actually ends up being at most $5,700 cheaper, at second best $3,600 cheaper between those two years. So then if the question becomes, why do we need 14 vehicles in 23, or why do we need 15 in 24? We wanted to also get an understanding, and I worked with Enterprise, and they did a really good job at updating this model of what is the cost of deferring vehicles. So every year when we make this decision, like we are today, 27 versus 19, is we are deferring vehicles to next year. And if we were to come to this decision point next year and do less than 14, we would be deferring vehicles. So the cost of deferring, as you can see, is always going to be somewhat less equity than the 27 model year over year over year, which means over 10 years, you're looking at a total difference of equity of about, about $230,000. The same thing goes for fuel, and the same principle goes for maintenance. So if you were to roll all of that deferred equity, or excuse me, all that deferred cost versus the 27 model, the cost of deferring over 10 years actually equates out to about $334,000 of lost value in the program because of the decision to continually defer vehicles through that next year. So overall, that's the decision point, is essentially looking at not just year one as we're going to save in year one, but also the ramifications that it carries in year two of the program, and then, of course, in year 6 and 7 of the program. So I'll leave it at that. I'll answer any questions, and if you have any more beyond this, just what I can try to go back to Enterprise, but hopefully I have enough information here to get everybody's understanding of the program.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you running all these extra numbers, because I think it was important for the governing body for all of us to see how these numbers change depending upon the number of vehicles. So thank you for doing this. Okay, let's see if there's any questions. Councilmember Hampton.
Chris, I've got two quick questions. fuel, that's the price of fuel for a year? Or
Correct. For white fleet vehicles only, it doesn't include diesel. That is a separate line item in our budget because we separate white fleet maintenance and repairs and fuel costs. So yes, that is only for fuel.
And it's costs, because again, if price of fuel, if let's say everyone starts running to gas stations,
right, which they are
all at the same time, then the cost of fuel starts going up, and then right. or the price of fuel starts going up, and then that increases our cost as well. So we use to compare, we use a static model of price to compare actual costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then maintenance, that's our cost of actually maintaining the white fleet.
Correct. So I can't remember off the top of my head the exact number, but I think our total maintenance cost, at least during 21, and Lazo can back me up, was about, from a budget perspective, like 140 plus thousand. So you can see the kind of the diminishing immediate gains of maintenance benefit in the program because you are replacing so many vehicles. And if you remember the inventory, these are the oldest vehicles in the fleet, so they're the biggest maintenance burden. So by eliminating 27, you're really slicing into your maintenance budget.
Right, and so that's the maintenance of the newer vehicles.
That's the entire fleet.
The newer vehicles goes down exponentially by about 50%.
So no, I'm talking on the sheet.
Yeah, on the sheet, it's maintenance of all white fleet vehicles in our city.
Okay.
Right. So if you're replacing 27 older cars with newer cars, your budgeted expenditures will go down.
Right, because you don't need to maintain it as
Correct.
much.
Those are the it's kind of the 20-80 rule, right? It's true for a lot of things in life that
right.
The 20 sickest percent of the population drives 80% of all healthcare costs.
Right.
Same thing here. Your 20% of your worst high mileage vehicles end up driving 80, the majority of time of your fleet team, their time and effort to kind of keep those vehicles going. So there's very much kind of a 20-80 rule going on.
Okay, so it's your new plus your old, excluding diesel.
Correct. Yep. Which your fire engines and your medic units.
Right, your big heavy duty rigs.
Yep.
Okay.
And then remember, this is split across general fund, water, sewer, stormwater as well. So
right.
it gets difficult when you're looking at the line item budget. You have to look at all of those different funds as well to kind of total those up and understand.
Right. I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
To follow up on one of Councilmember Hampton's questions, how was the fuel projection chosen? How did you decide what
the price?
The price,
Yeah. Chris, do you remember kind of where they came up? They went with like a fixed price. So let's say it was
if I remember correctly, it was a rolling average nationally from the last, I can't remember for how many composite years they utilized in their index. I think it's about 3 to 5, somewhere in there, to be honest. So it's going to be an average. Who knows? It's obviously, I think the national average climbed in the last week to about $3. Obviously, that's skewed by recent events, and it's obviously always more expensive on the West Coast than it is on the East Coast. So I can't remember if it was $2.50 or $3 in the average for this, but the averages in Virginia over those years have been pretty much right around that number. So
yeah, and so if they go up,
it was a rolling number over several years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the problem is if the prices go up, this gets even worse, right? By keeping the older, less fuel efficient vehicles, the increase in price actually increases the savings of replacing those 27 vehicles, if that makes sense, in terms of fuel expense.
No, that makes sense.
The cost will all go up together, but you'll have still, more savings with more fuel efficient vehicles. That's just a factor into the program.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Councilmember Hampton?
Mensing.
No questions?
No, I do have a question.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Well, not a question. No, I appreciate seeing the numbers broken down. I know that 27 vehicles seems like a lot, but I am in favor of the 27 vehicles because of the fuel efficiency and the maintenance savings.
Okay. Do you have a question?
That's it. Nope.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Councilmember Amaya?
I don't have any questions, no.
Okay. Councilmember Moore?
Christopher, what a wonderful analysis. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. I agree with Councilmember Minting, the savings on fuel and maintenance, to me is amazing and it's outstanding. I am also very supportive of the 27 vehicles. I hope that's the direction that the city goes. It just makes sense when you look at it analytically on the paper before us. So I appreciate your analysis tonight and thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Councilmember Javed.
No questions for me. And yeah, I'm in favor of the 27 as presented by the city manager.
Okay.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Banks.
Well, thank you, Chris, for the analysis. I just want to highlight for the citizens who are watching, and they're probably wondering, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? I was on your spreadsheet, and I checked out the second tab, fleet inventory, right? And Randy just gave us her presentation on the Department of Social Services and mentioned the increase of CPS cases. I mean, it's taking children and families. And you look at the vehicle Social Services has right now. They have a 2003 Honda Civic, another 03 Honda Civic, and they also have a 2003 Crown Vic. And they're going to be replaced with a current sedan, two four-door sedans, and a minivan. That's a big difference in quality of vehicles, as well as what you mentioned in fuel efficiency and saving on maintenance. And that's just an example of the efficiencies and the savings we're going to get from this fleet program. And going to the X amount of vehicles, 27, which I'm supportive of. So thank you. That's it right there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
I apologize. I interrupted you, Preston. Thank you. I am also very impressed with the fuel savings and the savings with maintenance. Excluding the equity, the fuel and the maintenance make the 27 vehicles definitely worthwhile. But I think this was an important exercise for us to see. It was important for the public to view how this was derived, how these numbers were derived, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chris. Are there any last-minute questions of any type? Okay, thank you so much.
Go ahead. Thank you. I'll stop sharing. Laszlo, I don't pass the presentation back to you.
Let me bring up the budget advertisement, or the draft advertisement. Let me share that. Okay. Can everyone at home see that?
Can you see it at home?
So again, this is just a draft, and we'll take this and make it actually work for the newspapers. This is just our attempt to, provide the information. And really, the critical component for us are the actual numbers, right? What are the top line numbers for expenditures? And I'll go over this because again, the double counting thing can get a little bit confusing for people. But again, we do this because of what we got dinged for in the FY16 and 17 audits when we struggled to catch up with those audits, and we had a bunch of different management errors pointed out to us, and so we completely transformed how we do our budgeting so that we never spend money that was not budgeted and appropriated by the governing body. That was a big emphasis of the FY16, 17 audits, is that the city was doing that in the past. They had been spending more than was actually budgeted and appropriated, which you can't do. So again, this is why we kind of showcase everything the way we do, and for double kind of the double counting purposes. So the easiest example, right, is the $12.7 million that we're transferring to the schools, plus the $1.2 million for the high school roof. That's part of this number here, this 58,958,000, but it's also part of the school's budget as well, 45 million, right? So therefore, that inflates this number. It makes our budget look bigger, but again, it's because it's two different entities that also are spending them. That we're spending the money by giving it to the schools, and then they end up actually spending it themselves. It's just like in the other double counted element as well. in the general fund operating budget, part of this 58 million, again, 958,000, there's a transfer in the operating budget over $1 million that goes to the capital fund. And then the capital fund spends that money, right? So that number, again, is counted twice. You show it in your operating, so we're getting your permission in the operating budget to transfer that to the capital fund. And then again, you're giving us that permission in the capital fund to spend it, right? So it's just showing how every single dollar is moving. And that's more detailed, of course, in the line item budget. But that's why I always put these asterisks when we do this, when we do the advertisement, because I just want to point out that there is kind of that, there are repeat dollars within this that are shown multiple times, and I always like to kind of highlight what that is so that they understand that the actual taxpayer expenditures is not that full $120 million, and to figure out what that is, again, you would go to the actual line item budget or the budget overview to kind of on the very bottom of the budget overview tab of the spreadsheet, there's a table there that shows every single revenue by category and every single expenditure without double counting. So if you want to see the actual True City budget, and we put that in the budget book as well, that's where you go. But this, again, for audit clarification, so that when the auditors look at what the governing body, what action you all took for the ordinance, because this is exactly what your ordinance is going to look like that you vote on in June, it matches up with all these different things. They're able to see, here's your capital transfer from operating, here's where it's shown now on the capital side, here's the schools transfer that the city did, and then here's the school spending that transfer. It's all documented in here, so they understand that full amount.
And can you reference the page in the budget book that final number is on?
Yeah, it's going to be in the chapter called Budget Overview, and I think it's the first table in that chapter.
Okay, because the public may want to go online and take a look at that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So when they open up the file, there's the executive summary, which is kind of my synopsis of the budget to you all and to the public, and then right after that, it goes into a chapter called Budget Overview, where we start off with that table. And it's going to have to be updated because there's been changes since we published it a few weeks ago. But once we kind of have this guidance, we can go back now and finalize those numbers, update that, and repost to the website to show what that is.
Thank you.
And so you can see here we have the general fund as one category of the $58,958,000. We have the water and sewer fund, the stormwater fund, and the solid waste fund. Please note that when the final budget ordinance is approved and the appropriations, we also add ASAP, Bull Run ASAP. They're an entity that we're fiscal overseers of, so they do pay a portion of our finance department's salaries because they help manage their fiscal situation. So we do include that because they're a quasi-governmental entity. They're actually part of our budgeting and appropriations process as well. But we don't put that here because that's really kind of a separate entity that they don't cost us anything, if you will. And then again, here's the school's information, which parallels the resolution that you had before you earlier this evening. And then again, here's just kind of the caveats that I like to express, just as kind of a reminder to everyone about what is going on. And then again, we do the same thing, and I think these are going to be separate advertisements of the budget and a separate advertisement of the tax rate and fees, and there will be separate public hearings. So the state law requires that you have a separate public hearing for your taxes and your separate public hearing for your budget, so that the public can comment on all those different components. Here, again, I have the recommendation for advertising $1.53. You can advertise the $1.55 rate and still end up voting on a budget that's $1.53 or $1.52 or $1.51, however you want. So sometimes people will advertise kind of just a higher amount to give them flexibility, but then vote on a final rate that's lower, right? But other than that, there's no change to the other taxes, but you can see here the stormwater fee and the trash fee of the 2.5% proposed interest, and you can see there's no water and sewer rates here because there's no change to those rates. So with that, I'll turn it over to see if there's any questions, any changes that you'd like to make to this to provide guidance so that we can give Lana the accurate information for what needs to be advertised.
I seem to remember last year, was it last year that there was a hiccup in the advertising?
I think it was a stormwater. Yeah, it may have been last year. I think you're right. Weren't they a penny off? I think with the stormwater, what they ended up advertising. Yeah, it was a newspaper error.
It was a newspaper error.
Correct.
Okay,
But
okay.
you're right, it forced us, I think, to have to hold a public hearing at a later date.
Yeah, and I hope that doesn't happen again, but, okay, thank you. Okay, let's go into questions and comments. Councilmember Hampton?
No questions, but my recommendation is keep advertising at the 1.53.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I don't have anything else.
Okay, and your voice is gone, so, okay. Councilmember Mensing?
No questions, and I agree we should advertise 1.53.
Okay. Councilmember Amaya?
No question, and I agree with the advertisement of 1.53.
Okay. Councilmember Javed?
Is it just questions regarding this or just a budget in general?
No, primarily this. We're trying to achieve consensus about advertising.
Yeah, yes, I have no questions then. Yeah.
Are you also in agreement to advertise at 153?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Agree with, I think it's a 153, the tax rate, correct?
Yes, 153 per $100 valuation. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
There it is. Yeah, I'm agreeing. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Yes, I agree with the $1.53 on the tax rate. The only change I would make, and I'm sure that's what you may not agree with this, but I think it's confusing when you have the FY 2021 A2. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the fact that we've amended our budget twice. I think the general public, because there's no kind of code telling me what that is, are going to be confused by that. So once we amend our budget, it becomes our base. So why not just call it the FY 2021 budget, and delete A2?
I can do that, but if you don't mind, I'd like to add just an asterisk, just for auditing purposes, for future, right? Like, if they go back, like we had to do when we had to complete the FY 16 and 17 audits, and go back a few years, you have to look through past budgets and appropriations, and it can get very confusing if they're not clear. Mm-hmm. So if I just put FY 21 budget, and they see these numbers, and they see that it doesn't align with the original budget that you all approved before the amendments, it throws everything off.
I think a footnote, I think you're right, a footnote saying that this was an amended budget.
Yes.
For FY 2021 is good, but just leaving the A2 there with just hanging, people aren't going to know what that is.
Perfect. I will go ahead and do that.
Yeah, the asterisk is the way to go. Thank you. Okay. Do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Moore?
No, that's it. I love it. I support the $1.53.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Banks?
I support the $1.53 as well. No questions.
Okay, thank you. It is unanimous, 153. Okay. Do you need a motion or?
No, so it's just general consensus.
Okay.
You're not really taking any budget action. You're just giving us guidance on what.
Sure. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and fix these asterisks.
Okay.
And then we'll open it up, I guess, if you have any other budget questions that you'd like for us to look into.
Okay.
And I know we're still not done with the Q&A, so I'll have to go over a few more.
I'm sorry, can you please start
again?
again?
We're not done with the Q&A. I know we still had some issues, but again, we still have another month roughly, but I will get to that hopefully next meeting.
Okay, so we can do another round of questions.
Oh,
then.
yeah.
Okay, good, thank
That's to
you.
encourage, again, especially after the public hearing, right?
Yes.
We should be hearing what the community has to say, and then we can take those and do follow-up Q&A based off.
I mean tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, tonight.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay. Yeah, okay. Councilmember Amaya, do you have any overall general budget questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. Councilmember Mensing?
No, I don't have any new ones.
Councilmember Hampton? Okay. Councilmember Moore, any overall general budget questions?
Not at this time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Javed, I think you said you might have had some.
Yeah, I have probably two. The first one was in regards to, I guess, the state pay raises that took effect May 1st, the minimum wage. Is that calculated into the budget? Are we aware of that? I just want to see if the city manager was.
Yes, we are aware of it, and it is something that Jay has been on top of because it only impacts his department at this point. I think when it gets up to the 15, it may. I think we've gotten to the point now where, because of some of the changes we made over the last couple of years in terms of increases, I do think we got the rest of all other department employees above it. I had to go back and check, but it was Jay because of the seasonal employees, his part-time employees. A lot of them are making the minimum wage, so their salaries are going up, and that is accounted for in the budget.
Yeah, because I think next year is going to go up again to $11. I think $9.50 currently, and then next year $11, right?
Yep,
and then gradually go up to 15.
That's correct.
My next comment, I guess not really a question. I'm going to go back, I guess, with the appropriation to the schools. I mean, historically, and what we are, I guess, forecasting for the next 10 years, seems like there's little to no increase into the school contribution. And we have, I guess, the school debt service decreasing, I think, FY23 by almost half. And I was wondering if that savings that we are paying for, the debt service that we are paying for, the savings can be applied to a small increase in your plan, in your 10-year plan.
Yeah, so again, that's your all's discretion how you'd like to do it. I would just point out that as their debt was increased, we didn't reduce our contribution to them. So I'm not sure the logic would hold that we would then, as their debt goes down, then give them more, right? Because we didn't do the opposite. Does that make sense to everyone?
That does make sense,
Okay.
yeah.
But again, it's your all's discretion.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm saying each department, we're growing gradually each year, year over year. But it is the only one that's being stayed constant.
It's not staying constant.
It's
no.
not.
Yeah, so.
I'm not including the state contribution. I'm just talking about the city contribution.
Yeah, so if you look at the 10-year summary tab, so it starts off at $12.7 million in FY22. By the FY31, it goes up to $15.4 million.
It continues to increase year over year, Hasib, just like it has in the past continued to increase year over year.
Yeah, so it'll go up by almost $3 million.
Right, I know it increases. I was saying to increase it more than, I guess, what is the increase year over year? It comes out to be 1.7% if I do the math correctly.
Yeah, let me
1.75
divided by 10
year over year.
He's calculating right now, Hasib.
Oops. One second here. Divided by 2.13%. That can, yeah, 2.13%.
2.12%. Yeah, I think it's like 2% or something.
You said 2.1 what?
2.13%.
2.13. Okay. Is that a constant?
The reason I'm bringing this up too is also not only has the minimum wage has increased, but they also put a 5% mandatory pay increases for state workers and also teachers, effective next year FY22. So, but with that said, the states are not increasing their budget to accommodate the pay raise, right? So they're making it mandatory, and then so my concern is that when the schools get hit with this mandatory pay raise for their teachers, where do we stand in our budget line?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Councilmember Javed. Can you explain it again? What?
Yeah, the state passed a 5% pay increase to state workers and teachers
Okay.
without giving additional funding for that pay raise, from my understanding of early articles that have been coming out. So when the schools when they have to increase their salaries with limited budget from the state, we would have to make up that difference.
Do we know that the state is not going to provide funding or either part or in whole?
May I? I believe it's a 5% over 2 years, and the state does provide part of that, if it's what they did last time when I was on the school board.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, in the early articles I've been reading, I have not seen a clear definition of what's being provided and how much. But I just bring this up now because this takes effect in FY22, basically beginning of next year. And the reason the increase, I know we're doing year over year, but that's just basically to catch up or meet up with inflation demands, right? Material costs is going to inflate, prices will increase, but not necessarily their budget will be increased to be, you can't utilize the funds for other programs, other teachers, other salaries. You're just paying the material cost. That's the point of inflation.
So I have a question. If it's going to happen in if this is going to occur at the beginning of calendar year 22, wouldn't the school board be aware of this? And that's part of their responsibility to plan that in the budget?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they should be aware of it. I don't know if it was incorporated in their budget. That's something I wish I asked when they were here, but I just found this out the other day.
I would say that if they were aware of it, which they undoubtedly are, then there are ways in their budget to accommodate that. Do you have a follow-up?
So overall, you're saying that, the debt service, when I go back to that, the debt service for the school is, decreasing. The savings basically is going to be applied elsewhere in the state.
What I'm saying is we don't look at the city and debt share of budget when making our budget decisions. We didn't do it in the past, right? When their debt was going up, we didn't say, oh, it's their debt going up, so therefore we should reduce the city transfer. We just didn't do it that way. It's so you can do it that way from now on. It would be difficult to kind of swallow, or hard to accept that we do that now as their debt goes down and not when it was going up. Well, it just doesn't seem fair.
If we didn't do it in the past, if it was just overall city debt, if we just considered city debt, why would we start breaking it down now?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me.
In the past, we did not have funds to give, right, because of our debt service. But our debt service is decreasing now, so those savings should be applied equally.
Well, just because our debt service is decreasing doesn't mean that we are out of the woods yet. We have an incredible amount of unmet needs in this city. We have staffing needs, we have infrastructure needs, we have a host of things that we need to accommodate.
Yeah, and again, our debt to budget ratio again is still much higher than everyone else. So it still restricts our overall budget capabilities. So I would just urge, again, if you want additional funding for schools, I think that should be the topic of discussion, and not creating new mechanisms that we just haven't been applying in the past when it only benefits them, not when it would have been detrimental to schools. I think we need to be fair with that analysis and just make the argument, and for argument's sake, what is the additional needs and what should be funded more for schools, and not creating new paradigms that just didn't exist before and would not be fair to the city to do now.
And another thing, every request has to stand on its own merits, and that's true for every department in the city. That's true for the school division. Every request needs to be justified. It needs to be looked at. It has to stand the test regardless. I mean, and I think city manager is correct when he says we can't invent new ways of looking at something just to justify something. It has to stand on its own merits.
No, I understand, and that's fair enough. But I was just thinking of, the reasoning of why we're not funding the schools where we need to, is because I hear constantly that we don't have the funds, or
we are funding.
Our debt service is too high. But in reality, our debt service is, decreasing. And I was just wondering if that could be applied to the schools, the savings that we have there as well. But to understand that it is a new, mechanism and something that, probably needs a little more detailed discussion. But,
we are funding the schools.
How I feel last 2 years about school funds.
We are funding the schools, Hasib. And don't say when we're not funding the schools. We definitely are funding the schools. We are well above the threshold of the absolute minimum. We're well above that. And it's increased year after year. In fact, when city departments had flat budgets and had no increases whatsoever, we still increased funding to the schools. So now it's time to be fair to all parts of the city. It's time to take a more balanced approach.
And we should look at this.
No, but I don't want to go back and forth, but the increase to the schools, is just basically inflation rate. I don't even look at that as an increase to schools. That's just basically a financial practice of going with the national inflation rate, right? The increase of funding to school is, I'm talking about going over the national average of inflation.
So I guess we should look again. You can keep making the arguments for more funding for schools, and again, that's going to be your all's prerogative. But when we do this, we have to identify the pie, right? So where are you taking the money from? Is it from the tax cuts? Is it from other departments? So I would ask that we start actually saying where are you taking the money from to give to additional? Because I think one argument is to make is, the schools need more money and here's my reasons for it. But then you have to follow up with, and here's where what I want to reduce from to pay for that, or here's the increase in tax rate that we need to do to pay for that. Yeah, you have to do the full analysis, or direct me to do so. Say, hey, come back with recommendations on where to cut departments.
And that's why I brought up the debt service, but I guess that's something that cannot be looked at.
Well, it's already built in the model. That's the thing. Yeah.
Right. And I understand that, we have other needs. I'm not arguing the fact that, everything goes to the schools, right? But it's just a thought, something to, I guess, think about. And I know I'm the minority vote in allocating more funds, but what I'm trying to, I guess, portray is that the inflation rate amount is just an inflation of keeping up with the materials increases over year. It's not additional funds they could use. That's my point I'm trying to make.
I don't think any part of the city gets what they need.
Yeah.
With regards to inflation or anything else.
Yeah, but so I'm just not understanding, right? So if the concern is we're not funding them above inflation, which means they can't do new things, I still don't understand then how I can only afford to come back to you all with 2 FTEs to be funded in FY22, because remember, one of them is funded by the state, right? 1 full-time and 2 part-times, and they can come back and fund 14 FTEs. Mm-hmm. That sounds like that's above inflation, the 14 additional FTEs. So I'm still not understanding the math in terms of if they're only being funded at inflation, which means they can only keep things constant. How can you add 14 FTEs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, they're cutting somewhere else. They're making, they made cuts elsewhere to accommodate.
Where?
their SOQs or other FTEs they need. And that's what my worry is, because if to accommodate their needs, they're making cuts elsewhere, which is also hurting the children and the educators in our city.
I really don't think that they would make cuts in areas that would hurt the children. I really can't believe that.
Right, and you think about what their job is. The job of the school board is to make that decision. They've been appointed. That's their decision to figure out, along with their equivalent of a Laszlo, to figure out where to put that money. That's their responsibility. We give them, for lack of a better word, we give them their stipend for the year, and it's their responsibility to figure out how to meet the needs, just like it's our responsibility to figure out how to meet the needs of the entire city. And by entire city, I mean everything from roads to parks to buildings to staff and the school. So I agree with Laszlo that we have to look at this as I was taught in MBA, a system-wide view. Not just at one area, but we have to look at a system-wide view. And there's going to be trade-offs. If you want to add to the schools, then we're going to take money off somewhere, whether that's not another police officer down the road, whether that's not another firefighter down the road. There's going to be trade-offs. And some of those trade-offs might be detrimental to the whole entire city. So that's another perspective to keep in mind as you're looking at the budget, or as we're all looking at the budget.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, and I agree. The school board, they decide how to utilize their funds, and something I should bring up with them as well in their next meetings and stuff. But I'm going to switch over to another topic. The last thing was I wanted to point out in regards to the budget was our parking, our new parking strategy that we incorporated the commercial vehicles.
Yes.
Is that the signage and everything was incorporated? Because I remember you were saying that was going to be added on.
Yes, it was. Let me go to the line item. Give me a second.
And then I guess my follow-up question would be is that I know we're doing a trial and error with the parking, see what works, what doesn't, and we're going to hold probably another work session later in the future. Do we have room in the budget to accommodate, I guess, other initiatives in the parking category?
Yeah. So if you look at row 42 of the CIP tab, that's where it's highlighted no commercial overnight parking signs. So we have budgeted $250,000 for the full kind of sign program. So the issue, if we're going to take step by step, that's a very expensive project. So I recommend if we take this as step one, we try to keep this for a few years and do an evaluation before we say, hey, in 1 year, let's spend another $250,000 to just replace everything that we just put up. I would want to get a few years of evaluation and see if that's working or not, because that's a lot of money to be spending for to replace signs. So that's going to be an additional, but to answer your question, no. So I don't have anything in FY25 or FY26 called no overnight non-decal parking CIP item, $250,000 for sign replacement. I'm assuming that this is going to work to alleviate parking concerns, but it's something that I can add into the model if you all would like, is that additional in 4 or 5 years, that additional $250,000 to replace the signs that we're going to put up in 22 with the just no decal if we want to take that step. But I prefer that we just let's see how this works out and see if that's going to solve the problem or not. But you can also say let's be conservative and let's put that $250,000 in the future just in case, as a backup plan in case this doesn't work. So either way works. Yeah.
Do you have a follow-up, Hasib?
That's fine. I mean, I guess the 250, I guess we should see 3 to 5 years is your estimated time frame.
I think so. You want to give it some time, just like the decals, the whole parking enforcement program. Since we've gone with decals now, it's been 2 years. We are seeing some impact here. So we add this to it. Let's give this a few years where we can do both things and see, especially with the parking enforcement officer, the technology they're going to have to scan the vehicles in a passive manner. Plus this, let's see if that resolves the problem, because again, the no decal overnight solution has its problems as well from a residential quality of life in terms of receiving visitors and other things as well. So there's negatives to going that route. So I think we should try to see if this is going to be successful or not before we pursue that route. It is the ultimate solution, but let's hope this is a good enough solution.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up? Are you done?
Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. We had a couple questions come in. The first question, can we post the enterprise chart on the city website? It was difficult to see. And the answer to that is yes. The school budget assumes constant growth in student ADM. What if the ADM goes down as national trends are predicting? Yeah.
Spaces back. My apologies. Keeping it, I get them back. We can actually see them.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that.
I thought their model does show ADM going down. Yeah,
It does.
And so I agree with the resident that the national trends in terms of millennials and Gen Z is having a lot less kids than previous generations. So it is a potential issue. It's largely going to depend, I think, on immigration and how many children are brought because of immigration or other things. But yeah, they're absolutely right. There is going to be a reduction in the number of kids. At least that's what the trends are showing across the nation, across Virginia right now as well. So.
And we don't know how, in the end, we're going to compare to other localities because it's all relative.
Absolutely, we could just be a very family-friendly community, and even though the total share is going down, our share may still go up because people with kids may want to live here. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay. Vice Mayor Banks, don't want to forget about you. Comments or questions?
I also add to that resident's question about the school's ADM. It also, what matters also is the mix of students. Like this year, we had an increase of English learners, students, and special needs students, which requires assistance in the different ratios in the other classrooms as well. So it just depends. But I don't have any questions at this time. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we've gone around. We've done this.
Daryl?
Beg your pardon?
Did you get Daryl?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I did get Daryl. Yeah. Preston was the last one. Okay. Okay.
Madam Mayor, I think more comments on YouTube.
I beg your pardon? I read that.
There's more comments from a resident on YouTube.
The resident said, agreed with what Councilmember Mensing said about the state paying part of the 5%. And also the resident says taxpayers want a break from decreasing debt payments. Probably referring to what you were saying, Councilmember Javette, about increasing the schools when the debt goes down. I think his reference is to making sure the taxpayers get some benefit from the decreasing debt service. Okay.
Yeah. If I can add an important discussion point also, because with affordability, housing affordability, I am very worried in over the next few years what's going to happen in Northern Virginia as a market and in our city as well, because people bought their homes.
You speak a little louder.
Sure.
Sorry.
People bought their homes here at a value that was less, right? Those values are just going to keep appreciating regardless of what we do because of market demand versus supply, right? And with Amazon and everything else happening, we're just going to see continual appreciation value. It's good and bad, right? Good because you build equity as a homeowner, but bad in terms of tax burden as well. So it is. I think we need to. I say this because I want to advocate with ARPA money that we do, and I know the county housing department's going to come in June and give us a presentation, but it would be nice to utilize some of this ARPA money to look at this problem. And when you look at the legislation, it does ask jurisdictions to evaluate this issue in terms of housing affordability as well with ARPA money. So I want to provide that early kind of preview and rationale, because residents are correct that they bought at a certain value. They're even though the housing value goes up, their incomes necessarily aren't going up to match that, right? So again, it's a good thing their taxable income is going up, right? It's not that our tax rate's going up, right? It's like if you get a promotion in your work, your salary goes up, but that means you're paying more income tax. It doesn't mean the income tax rate was raised. It's just you're earning more. That's what's happening here. Your housing taxable income is going up, but that means your tax burden is going up. So sure, you can sell your home, you create greater equity, but do we really want all of our residents to have to sell their homes and end up leaving, right? So it's a legitimate concern, I think, that a lot of our residents are expressing that we do need to think about in the future.
Right, and it boils down to that they should get the benefit of decreasing debt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they've had to pay for all that debt. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, have we exhausted this for this evening? I'm sure it's not going to end, but we'll have more discussion. But I think that's it for this evening. So moving on to the next item. Next is a discussion of adding flags to what is now displayed in the city at various times of the year. And we would be considering, for example, adding a breast cancer awareness month flag in order to call everyone's attention to the issue. So if we could have the governing body express their thoughts on that would be great. Councilmember Amaya, would you like to start us out?
So this was an idea brought up by the resident of Manassas Park. She's very involved with the breast cancer awareness due to her mother having died from breast cancer. And she does have an organization that brings awareness to the topic, especially for the Latino community. So she wanted to know if it was possible for the city to kind of embrace and celebrate, and I guess bring more awareness to that month and to that disease that takes away people's lives. And so I'm just bringing it up here just because she addressed it. She does want to be able to come and present to you guys maybe next Tuesday if it's something you guys would be interested in hearing.
What month is breast cancer?
October, I think.
October?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe, yes.
It is October.
Yeah. And this is also more of a general discussion about flags in general.
Right.
Yeah, in order to...
Correct.
Councilmember Mensing?
My only question, I guess, concern was I am, of course, supportive of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. When I first started here, or maybe it was right before, but I was in a meeting where an organization asked to paint the street for gay pride, and we said no, because if we had to do it for them, we might have to do it for other organizations that we don't quite agree with.
Yes.
So,
and I remember that.
Okay.
They wanted to do rainbow across the street, which is fine with me.
Yeah, sounds
I would be out
fantastic,
there painting it myself.
Right.
But yes, we would have to say, for example, well, I won't name any organizations, but we would have to give equal time to organizations the message from which we could very seriously disagree with.
Yeah, so that's my concern. It's not, I don't want to sound like I'm not supportive. I think it might be a slippery slope if someone were to come from an organization that I might not morally agree with.
Right.
And then we wouldn't be able to say no.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Hampton.
Well, first I want to say I've had family members that have fought and they've survived breast cancer. I've had coworkers that have fought and survived. I had a very dear coworker of mine that fought and didn't survive after 15 years. So, but that's my personal opinion. As a council member, I do not want to put the city in any position. Like Councilmember Mensing said, it puts us in a slippery slope. I'm all in favor, and I know this sounds very harsh, but a zero acceptance policy to protect the city and the residents.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
Let's see here. I guess my first question is to the city manager. What do we currently hang flags for in the city? What are some of the festivities? What are events that would cause us to hang a flag throughout the city?
Yeah, so 4th of July is probably the best example where we put up the American flag, and then for the holidays, we do put up decorations during the winter holiday period.
They're non-denominational, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so just those two
So we
times.
did like a Thanksgiving, or just?
No, I think
I'm just
there's
trying to understand the holidays. I understand the July 4th.
snowflakes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
they're Christmas lights pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
So we did nothing for any other nonprofit organization?
No, not.
No.
Yeah.
We have not so far, have
Correct.
we?
We haven't. No. Yeah.
So the decision to paint the police vehicle pink for rust awareness, was that a city decision? Was that a city-sponsored activity or event?
No, that was an unusual circumstance. That was the previous mayor giving permission to the police department to do that. That did not come before city attorney, nor did it come before the governing body, which is why we're here this evening.
If in the future we decide to advertise our new development, our new businesses that will be going down into the Civic Center, is that something that we would consider putting up on a banner or flyer throughout the city saying, go visit the new downtown Civic Center?
Absolutely, and again, that's where I think the point of my earlier email was, if it's a city initiative, right, where we're saying, hey, we want to do this, like let's say we want to raise cancer awareness, city staff, what can we do to do that? And we say, hey, put up flags or do different things. If it's city initiative, that's your policy, right, that you're coming up with. So perhaps that's something you all need to discuss, is kind of looking at your policies in terms of what things you'd like to promote and provide guidance to staff on those items that you would like to promote. But it has to be a city kind of initiative, just like as me as current economic development coordinator, to advertise our downtown, the downtown businesses, to benefit our tax base. It's a city initiative, a city initiated strategy. And so that again, that's different from hearing a request and saying yes or no and making a definitive statement on speech, right, or a decision on speech, and which speech we want to approve or not, right? Versus, I know it's a complex issue, but at least that's kind of our kind of the legal framework of a city initiated activity versus a petition. Right, so we will partner with nonprofits for certain things, but it's not because they're applying to work with us and then we're saying yay or nay, right? We're reaching out. We have a service requirement. So let's say the food program, right, where we wanted to deliver food to our residents, and we wanted to eventually reopen Parks and Rec and transition that to a nonprofit. We had a partner that stepped up. We reached out to multiple entities, and this was the best nonprofit that stepped up. So we formed an operational partnership with them. But again, that was kind of city initiated versus us ruling on what kind of speech we find to be acceptable or not. And I know it's a nuanced issue. It's just that's kind of the legal framework. Just for background, and most of you are probably aware of this as well, kind of the Supreme Court decision just a few years ago caused every jurisdiction to have to change its whole signage ordinance, right? Because they made it clear if there's any language where we're regulating signs based off of content, we are violating the First Amendment and are made vulnerable to action, court action, and lawsuits. So there's been a lot of changes to that, and just more kind of cognizance from local governments about how to make sure that we're not violating people's First Amendment rights or picking which speech to find acceptable on public forums versus not acceptable. Yeah.
Two more questions. So a high school wanted to put up advertisement for their 5K race to the city to raise funds for graduating seniors. Would that be something that would be a flag or thing that we hang to advertise?
That's a city thing, right?
Yeah, I think the schools are
Hours.
part of the city, so it makes sense for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, so that would not be controversial then.
Yeah.
So I guess my final question then, I guess is to Dean or to Leslie, whoever to answer. If we accept the flags for the Breast Awareness Month in October, why does that then predetermine that we have to accept anyone else who asks? So if some organization that we're not supportive of, why couldn't we tell them no? So I just want to know, if we accept one, is it then that we have to accept them all? Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that a legal statement that we're making?
Well, my personal concern, that's my personal concern, that we could, I'm sorry,
On?
I beg your pardon?
He's asking if Dean is on, but he's
The
not.
city attorney was on the line.
Oh, no, Dean is not with us this evening.
It's the budget work session. Yeah.
Let me ask a question. I mean, if we allow one group, does that
Right.
necessarily mean that we have to allow all groups?
We
There are
would,
some groups that I wouldn't want to see some anti-LGBT groups posting signs throughout our city. So I'm not sure if we allow one group. I need to know the answer to that.
Yeah. Can I?
If
Well,
we say
can we
yes
defer?
to one, does that mean we have to say yes to all?
well, my concern is that whether we do or we don't, we can open ourselves up to accusations of favoritism. Because what if, I'm looking at this, and I support Breast Cancer Awareness Month to the maximum, but I look at this as, let's see this holistically. A lot of nonprofits, a lot of organizations in general, if we say yes to one, how are we going to say no to the next one, even if we can legally do so? How will we navigate that and not be accused of playing favorites? That's my
I think
concern.
like we do anything else, like we did the budget. We obviously made decisions here tonight where we will be making policy decisions based on our budget. I mean, if the electorate doesn't like those decisions, they can vote us out of office. That's how they can speak. But we do have that power and authority to make those kinds of decisions. I support breast cancer. Both my mother and my sister had it. I would have no problem with flying pink flags throughout our city to support breast awareness. I think it's an important decision. I'm willing to vote and say yes. If there's people in the public who don't agree with me, vote me out of office.
Yeah, can I just say a couple of things?
Yes, go
So
ahead.
again, so for legal opinions, I would advise that we hold off and actually wait till the city attorney can come here or provide you all a legal opinion, because we do, again, we have to protect the entity that is called the City of Manassas Park, right? So I would advise that we wait and hold off and you all seek actual legal
Yeah, that's why I
counsel.
raised the first question.
Yeah.
I really wanted a legal opinion as to
Correct.
can we say no to other organizations if we say yes to one?
And secondly, I just want to reiterate, again, you all can, to Councilmember Moore's point, you all can have initiatives, right, as a governing body to proactively say, hey, guess what, this year we want to promote these things, right? That's different from saying we are going to weigh the public's speech requests for us and decide which ones we agree with or not. Right, so I know it's a nuance, but it all has to do with legal protections. So again, I would advise that we hold off on that. And I'm not your attorney, so I do advise that you hold off and seek counsel from your city attorney before going in depth about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, when I did bring up the subject in the beginning of the year, we were going to discuss, she was donating the flags, but there was not going to be any type of organization behind the donation. It was just for us to be able to promote the month. So it's not coming from an organization. I just wanted her to come in here to present to you why that was important to her, but necessarily because she wants to be named as the donor or named as an organization. That was another reason why you guys decided, okay, bring it back up again. That's why I'm bringing it up again.
But
Yes.
it's still an individual, right? So
He was the one that brought up the idea,
correct. So
yes.
another individual can come and say, hey, I'm going to donate this for you. Please put this up.
Okay.
Right. And so again, the constitutional rights aren't just for organizations. It's also for individuals.
Okay.
So, and since we're government, picking between speech can be problematic. But again, you can do proactive initiatives. I just want to keep reemphasizing
Gotcha.
that.
Okay.
That can be yours, right? And governments do that across. Just to Councilmember Moore's point, we will promote our downtown. We'll promote other things, but it's something that we're initiating, and so I try to keep those two frameworks separate when deciding on how we want to make these decisions. And again, always please seek your legal counsel before making that kind of decisions that could get us into a constitutional lawsuit, right, about us violating someone's First Amendment rights.
So it would be more of a decision of making it an initiative?
This last point, Laszlo, if there's several in our community who don't support the downtown. We've heard from them, we read about them on Facebook. So they may not agree with us putting flags supporting the downtown throughout our city.
Correct, but this isn't, let's say, a business said, hey, came in and requested, hey, put up my flags, and I said yay or no, right? Now I'm regulating speech. The downtown advertisements coming from an economic development strategy of the city, not of a strategy of picking and choosing which speech we want to promote. I know again, it's
choosing which business we
correct.
Want.
We're advocating for a downtown of our city to develop. So absolutely, you're absolutely right, Councilmember Moore, that people can and certainly do disagree with our downtown strategy. We hear about it all the time, but I'm not picking and choosing which businesses I want to promote. I'm saying from an economic development standpoint, we want to promote this downtown initiative and the businesses within that downtown, not because they requested us to do that, but because we're proactively from a economic development policy taking that strategy. Yeah,
well, are we looking at Breast Awareness Month as a business or a freedom of speech argument? To me, it's just an awareness.
Yeah.
We're not promoting, we're not suggesting, we're just saying, be aware that breast cancer exists and go get a mammogram.
Yeah.
But again, other people can say, please be aware of things that we do not agree with.
Just like people who say, don't go to your downtown because we never wanted it. We sure don't want a movie theater, and they talk about a whole lot of things they don't want.
Yeah. But again, now just keep the framework separate about city initiative, proactive messaging versus, because we message all the time as a city, versus us determining what kind of speech we want to promote or not promote from individuals requesting. It's that requesting action, right, that sets up someone's constitutional rights on whether they've been violated or not, right? So, but again, I'm not your attorney, so I'm not the best. It's just that's my interpretation from what counsel I've seen before, my previous jurisdiction and this jurisdiction, in terms of how to be careful when navigating First Amendment rights issues.
And I see a big difference between promoting the downtown with signage and promoting, say, Tuberculosis Awareness Month, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Thyroid Problem Awareness Month. I mean, I know it may sound ridiculous, but there's a lot of different entities and groups that would approach us for awareness. So I just want us to keep that in mind. City Attorney is not with us this evening, but he will be with us next Tuesday, and we can get his firm opinion on the issues that we've raised this evening. So if you could please have your friend hold off and not come next Tuesday, because we need to hash this out first. Do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Moore, before we move on to Councilmember Javed?
No, thank you. I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Javed, your comments. Councilmember Javed.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have no problem with it as well, promoting Breast Awareness Month. And, you know, we put Christmas flags up every year. And in a diverse community like ours, not everybody celebrates Christmas, you know. So that's a religious celebration, and you know, not everybody here is Christian. So, you know, it doesn't have to do with, you know, if we get somebody approach us that we don't like Councilmember Moore said, we just vote it down. You know, we don't have to if it's discriminatory or if it's, you know, bad in nature, we don't have to put it up. So, I mean, something like this, I think it's a good idea. I would support it. I mean, like, again, our mission and our branding of the city is to feel like a family, right? And something like this will make the community come together and it will make us feel like a family as well.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say, I don't look at those decorations as celebratory of Christmas. I don't want us to get into hot water regarding promoting one religion over another. So they're snowflakes. I can't remember what all we have, but I don't view them as celebrating Christmas. So I just want to make that clear. We could walk down the path towards another problem if we started that. Okay, Vice Mayor Banks, do you have a comment, question?
Yeah, I just want to do our due diligence first and have our city attorney give his opinion on it or analysis on this.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, well, Dean will be back next Tuesday. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we have no closed meeting. We're up to adjournment. Is there anything for the good of the city that anyone would like to bring up? Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.